Hello and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CPL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe and Mike.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And today we are talking about Matchweek 12 in the Canadian Premier League. And Mike, it was a bit of a weird one this weekend because it almost felt like the weather gods didn't want to allow the CPL matches to be played.
It was striking in all ways, wasn't it?
Yeah, we almost faced the 10 plagues, I think, this weekend in the different host cities of the matches. But we did get through, and we did manage to play all the matches, even if we had to wait
just about
some of them and suffer through a couple of them as well. But before we dive into everything that happened in the weekend, weather permitting, remember to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, as well as finding us on YouTube under the same name to see the visual side of the podcast. Now, we're going to start with the only game that didn't have some sort of weather impact in the match day, and that was between Halifax and Vancouver. Now, that being said, as the only game without weather impact, I was sort of hoping for a little bit more action in this one, especially given the fact that Halifax have been able to start so well and be able to try to push for those top spots. They've obviously fallen down in the last little bit, but still, in the end, they did get a win against Vancouver FC. It was a 1-0 win thanks to a late goal from TMG. And you could argue that Halifax probably could have had 2 or 3 in this match had it not been for some classic Callum Irving heroics and a couple good blocks and clearances from defenders. In the end, I feel like the right team won for Halifax, and they'll be happy to get a win, their first win. In 4 games, they drew the last one against Cavalry and then went back-to-back defeats. So it's nice for them to kind of pick some points back up, really stretch that gap now between York United and Halifax. We'll talk about York United in a bit, but that is now 7-point gap between 4th and 5th. Mike, looking at the way that the gap is forming and the way that Halifax played in this, would you say that it's apt that the table is looking as it is? And considering how Vancouver played, it makes sense where each of these teams are in the table?
Yeah, I think so. Halifax were the better team. Like you said, they earned their win. Should have had a few more. I think the thing that's maybe frustrating them a little bit is that they're struggling to score. Generally, in like the last, I think they've got 3 goals in 4 games now. I think it is, just on the top of my head. They've got the quality in it, but one thing that we always go on about is how you play each team 4 times, and teams start to work out how your system runs. You have to come up with these tweaks here and there. Whereas I think at the moment Halifax are doing the same thing over and over again. So I don't know. It's obviously they're still the better side, but maybe they need to start thinking of a few little changes to how they're going at the moment, just to really make it a little bit more difficult for other sides to keep up with them, because I think they're not putting daylight between themselves and other teams at the moment. I think that's the only concerning bit for them. What is otherwise like a good result that does splits the league 4-4.
Yeah. And when you look at the way that Halifax actually played, they had to rely on a brilliant goal from TMG.
Excellent header, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's just the kind of header that I think the camera angle helped a lot too. You saw it fly perfectly into that corner, and the way that it spun and everything, it was just a stunning header. But you could argue as well that they were maybe spared from a couple of penalties. I don't know if spared maybe is the right word. They were kind of, I don't know if you could say robbed on all of them, but there were 3 penalty shouts that Halifax had. And I feel every consecutive one was less an obvious penalty as the previous.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I wanted to talk about like the first one on Coimbra because it's sort of similar to the goal I think he scored last week, where it looked like he was clean through and he put it past Mateo Campagna. Mateo Campagna was going around him, had his hands on his back, and did kind of push him. Coimbra might have fallen a bit too quickly, but for me, that's still a stone cold penalty. And I was very, very surprised that the referee didn't call for a penalty. And we'll talk about how a referee did call for a penalty that wasn't a penalty later in the show. But for this one, I was very, very surprised. And I thought Campagna was a very, very lucky boy that it wasn't called for a penalty.
Yeah, definitely. I think I agree with you on that again, but there's this concern, isn't there, with referees making big decisions. They don't seem too confident a lot of the time. And yeah, we'll go into what happened in maybe a little overconfidence of one of them, I'm not sure, but it contradicts what I'm saying to a degree. But I think there is times where there's the difficulty is, I don't know how much they working well with their assistant referees to keep up with the play and keep up with the game, because sometimes when there is these quick transitions, they're a long way from the action, so you've got to really rely on your assistant referees to really get into a good position to see what's happening as well. So I'm not sure. There's obviously across the league we all want the refereeing to improve. We're not trying to just be harsh or rude to them, but that was difficult to justify, wasn't it, that they didn't get a single penalty?
Yeah, and you would think, I mean, I know it's not a part of the rule book and a lot of people don't like it, but there are cases where referees kind of maybe realize that they made the wrong call and they try to make up for it in some way later. But Renzo Villanueva had none of it, because Bahambula went down under pressure. Thiago Coimbra went down under pressure again, and the home crowd was an uproar each time. And each time Villanueva said, nope, no penalty, and went on. So I think lucky for him, Halifax still ended up winning the match thanks to that goal, because if not, he would have struggled to get out of Halifax, I think, with those huge contentious calls all going in Vancouver's favor. But nevertheless, I still think that the way that Halifax played, it isn't them at their best. Obviously it's this created a lot of chances, and Callum Irving came to the rescue. He made a couple of great saves. He made a double save, was forced to make a double save. There was that one chance, I forget who it was on, that Halifax had shot it, but Irving made a save. I think it was from Provo, and then the ball bounced, and Enu could have cleared it, and he just kind of let it bounce in front of him, like looking around, like, what am I doing? And then he got muscled off the ball, and then a Halifax player shot it. And you could see Callum Irving losing his mind on Enu, be like, what are you doing? It literally looked like Enu just switched off. And not like in the football term, like, oh, he switched off. Like, he actually, the power off.
Yeah.
Like,
it seems to happen a few times with the game.
Yeah, a couple of times, yeah. And it was just, it was so funny. And this is the thing with Vancouver, is like sometimes they can do some really good stuff. Like, I think Campagna had a really good game despite the loss. He made some big clearances and tackles. I think definitely he's been Vancouver's best defender this season. But at the same time, they make some really, really silly decisions.
Yeah.
And it usually ends up costing them. In this case, it didn't. They got quite lucky because, again, super Callum Irving in net. But it just so... It's like Vancouver are such a mind-boggling team. And one of the players that you wanted to talk about from Vancouver is Terrence Campbell. And I think it's great to be able to highlight Terrence Campbell, because we talked a little bit about Güero Diaz the week before and the fact that he might not be coming back, and he's not really scoring, he's not really getting involved, and he's one of the leading strikers in the CPL. Well, Darren Campbell is the leading striker in the CPL in the goal scoring charts all time.
Yeah.
And in this match where you're supposed to be, the guy for Vancouver in terms of scoring goals, Guido Diaz has kind of taken on a little bit more of a creative role, and he hasn't really featured all that much. He's been taking off he hasn't played full 90s. He's been taken off and been substituted on. But Darren Campbell has been consistently in the lineup. And in this one, there was no Guido Diaz. It was just him. And looking at the stats, he had the least touches of any outfield player in the 90 minutes, 22, which again, as a striker, you don't need to always have a touch on the ball, right? That's fine. And the only touch that really matters to striker is the one that you put into the goal. But he lost the most duels in the match, 9. And he only had 9 attempted passes, and he only made 5 of them.
Yeah.
He was just, I don't know how to put it nicely, but it didn't matter if he was there or not for Vancouver FC in that match. And for a player of his caliber with his proven track record, the fact that he might as well have been just watching from the stands. I mean, that really kind of shows the issues that are going on at Vancouver.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like you say, some strikers may only need one touch to put the ball in the back of the net, so sometimes that can be misleading. But I think in this case, we just didn't see him in the game. If you were truly again partway through and hadn't looked at the lineups, you'd be forgiven for not knowing if he was playing or not. He's just not involved in the game at all. And try to find some positives on him, just for him, saying that maybe they're not creating the opportunities, they're not getting the ball when he's losing out on duels where they pour balls going forward. But you've got to make yourself available at the same time as well. They brought in Batista, a bit more of a creative player who can try and link the play. Barr was brilliant in stages again. So you've got players who are moving around and getting on the ball and can help find you, but I don't think he's not finding space. He's not making the runs. He's not making the movements that's going to get him the ball, let alone get him chances in the box. And yeah, it's just seems to be playing nowhere near the level that you can expect from him from his history in CPL.
Yeah, and it's tough for him. I don't think it's all on him. He's had a rough time in the last couple of years. Obviously, we saw his kind of injury-ridden career with Forge. He really was his golden era was with Pacific way back when in 2021. Yeah. Hasn't really been able to recapture that form. Came to Vancouver. That was a deal that was long in the making. I remember I heard that was happening months before it actually happened. And it was a signing that, really gave a lot of people hope that Vancouver FC could go on and do something, because they had Guido Diaz and Darren Campbell, 2 top goal scorers of the CPL all time. If you're going to get a goal, who better than have those 2 players? But I think that really goes to show that the issues at Vancouver aren't as simple as, just throw in 2 top scorers and then you'll be set, right? It runs deeper. It has to do with the system, it has to do with the morale, it has to do with the confidence, it has to do with the vision of the club. And it really does seem like, because of these issues at the higher level, it's reflecting on the team, it's affecting the team. And when you have 2 scorers, top goal scorers in Darren Campbell and Guido Diaz, and how many goals have they scored? I think Darren Campbell has 1 so far this season. I think he might have 2 assists for him right now. But Guido Diaz, I don't even know how many goals he has. I think he might have 1 as well, and no assists. That's what I think he might barely have more than that. But for me, it screams we don't feel like we can win. Like, we don't feel like we can go score goals. The only player that actually seems like, in the face of despair, that is doing anything is Elash Ba, or Tierno Ba. I don't know why they call him now Tierno instead of Elash. I don't know if there was a name switch there.
Yeah,
I'm still calling him Elash. People around him are still calling him Elash. I'm not quite sure what's going on there.
Okay.
But
Ba
Ba is the only one that seems up for it. He was the only one that came close to scoring for Vancouver, really, in this match. And he's been their most dynamic attacking player. Yeah, he still struggles sometimes in decision making and stuff like that, but at least he's doing something. At least he's putting the effort in. It just feels like every player's crestfallen the minute that they become under pressure.
Yeah, I think with him, I think it's all pace. Like he's making things happen because he's taking the ball from deep and running it forward. I think that's one of the big issues that you can in defense of Terran Campbell is like the players aren't creating like Vancouver aren't working the ball forward. They're hitting it long, or Elijah Barr's is running at them, or Dada Luke or is making a run and just bursting through with pace. It's not they're not able to hold on to the ball, and when they do hit clearances, it's looking for long balls over the top into the sides usually, where you've got in this game would have probably been like Batista and Barr chasing, and you're dealing with a good defense in this game as well, so it is made difficult. But I think looking back here, I think Vasco Frey had a mixed game. I think sometimes he's very infuriating on the ball. He made 3 chances, but I think they were all from deeper passes going forward, or it wasn't. It's not things that you're looking at a striker in that system knowing that he'll get a few chances. It's very much hit or miss at times.
Yeah, exactly. And it's tough to really see what can change for Vancouver. And it's a similar feeling that I think I have also for Pacific. And we'll talk about that at the end.
Yeah.
But it just feels like both of the BC sides are kind of just listless right now. And they're struggling to break out of this funk. And it's a deep funk for both of them right now. And I don't even think if you add another striker up top and you put 3 fantastic strikers for Vancouver FC or 4 or whatever, it's going to make that much of a difference right now for them. And it's just a struggle. And that's 6 matches now without a win for Vancouver FC in the league. If you count the Canadian Championship match, that's 7. They only have 1 win all season. And you can just tell the confidence is low, the belief is low. They need something, some sort of change to help them out. And I don't know what it could be realistically. Obviously, the big one that's very common in football is sack the manager, get a new one in moments like this. And I think at other levels of football, that would be happening if not had already happened.
Yeah.
But the way that Vancouver FC are running, the vision that they have, the philosophy that they have that's different, makes it so that I don't think that's going to be a realistic thing, at least right now. I think it won't be until potentially the impacts of what's going in the league financially really shake the club. I don't think we're going to be expecting that, but I don't know. We'll see. It will remain to be seen. But for now, Vancouver FC are looking a little bit rough. Somebody else that's having it a little bit rough right now, celebrating and probably feeling kind of defeated, is actually a former Vancouver FC striker, Moses Dyer, who we talked about last week, how our new favorite club in Ireland is Galway United because of the former CPL players that are there. Moses Dyer's there, and then Malcolm Shaw is now there. He made recently his move. He made Shaw his debut for Galway United last week when they faced St. Patrick's Athletic, which for CPL fans know that's a team that David Norman, another Vancouver FC player, also played for and won a championship with. So, connection between
Yeah.
Ireland and the
It's right.
CPL. Exactly. If the listeners are confused about why we're suddenly talking about the Irish League, this weekend left a little bit to be desired.
Yeah.
So we're trying to spice things up here. But Moses Dyer came really close to scoring in that match in the 3-1 win on 2 occasions, but it's still nice to see him involved. He has scored, actually, in a game that Galway are currently playing in right now at the time of recording. I think it's almost done.
Yeah, 92nd minute at the moment.
92nd minute, and it's against Sligo Rovers, who are below them in the table. And Moses Dyer actually scored. He scored in the 47th minute. Now, it seemed that wasn't enough drama for him. Not 6 minutes later, he gets into a heated tussle with a Sligo Rovers player, a center back, I think, and both of them get sent off in the 53rd minute. So in 6 minutes, you go from 0 to 0, and now Sligo are winning 2-1 after scoring in the 73rd minute, and Galway are trying to chase it in the final minutes. Malcolm Shaw has come on, and I think he's had already a couple of shots, but no goals for him. But a little bit of you can take the man out of the CPL, but I guess you can't take the CPL out of the man, especially Vancouver FC, because Moses Dyer, we know he can be a little bit of a hothead, but
I'll try and search through and try and find the reel of that on that. See if we can share that.
That would be great. It's exactly what happened. But just in case you were curious what's going on with some ex-CPL players, there you go. Hopefully everyone can tune in to Galway United now. If you're a CPL fan who wants to follow some players, that's your team in Ireland. But now let's move on back to the CPL and let's talk about the second match. And this is one of the ones that was affected by weather, though it wasn't delayed by weather. The 2 other matches were delayed by weather. This one was not, because there was no escaping the weather. That's between York United and Ottawa. This match was played in York, in North York, so just north of Toronto in Ontario. And unfortunately for all the listeners in Ontario, I do not envy you right now because you must be melting.
Yeah.
For those that are not aware, Ontario is currently going an extreme heat wave, where on Sunday, the day that this was played, it reached a peak of, I believe, 34 degrees. And that was without counting humidity, how it makes it feel. So like a real feel.
And on top of those like artificial surfaces, the heat just sticks as well.
It is brutal. I have played in some hot games in Ontario where on artificial turf where it literally feels like you're running through molasses. But I don't think ever quite as hot as what these two teams must have done. It was a really, really difficult match to play. I mean, to watch, but I can only imagine how difficult it was to play.
What was Anisha Reed thinking though in a long sleeve?
Maybe it was try not to get, UV rays in his skin or something. I don't know what he was thinking. If it's a superstition or something.
Maybe.
Goodness gracious. It must have been baking in that for sure. But it was a 0-0 game. Not much to talk about. We can talk a little bit about mostly Ottawa because they were, I think, the better side in this in this match.
I thought York had the better first half, but Ottawa came back into it better. And the first half, there wasn't much at all to talk about, really.
No. Exactly. It was, like I said, the weather really took its toll. If you watch that match, you know how sluggish the players were. Everything felt like it was at 0.5 speed. It was a tough one. But Ottawa, I think what they tried to do was smart from David Mejia. I think he recognized that they weren't going to be able to play the way that they usually play, which is like fast neck break speed, going up and down, really, shock and awe kind of tactics with the attacking players that they have. Because they can probably only do that for 20, 30 minutes before they get absolutely gassed. They're out of breath. They won't be able to recover. And then York might be biding their time and then go and try to expend a little bit extra energy to catch a tired and go and get some goals, and then they get the win. So instead, David Mejia kind of played a little bit more reserved, but instead, not to sit deep like a la Cargo, but to dominate possession and just keep their foot on the ball. I think I was looking at it, I was like 7 out of the 11 players had like 90+% pass accuracy by the end of the match. Like the players that finished with like the 90 minutes, it was insane. And they just held on to possession, just patiently waiting for mistakes to happen, hoping that because they hold on to possession, York will be running around and get themselves tired and be able to, create those gaps for them to go through. But credit to York, they really stayed disciplined and they stayed structured, and they tried to minimize expending too much energy while still not making it easy for Ottawa. And that's part of the reason why it finished 0-0. But it just felt like the weather really just got in the way between these two teams. And in the end, it couldn't really be anything else but a 0-0.
Yeah, I thought a few players, I think, was impressed with Gabato and Asatola in the middle for York, because they did get around quite a bit before the Asatola forced off a bit of an injury. They did get around quite a bit, because when you're coming up against the midfield of Aparicio, he's gonna find energy from somewhere, and you've got Rodriguez and Tabla causing problems, so you've got to be switched on. And I thought they did really well to sort of manage how they sort of expended their energy, pick their times to burst forward and to make sure they were getting in position and getting back quickly. I thought that was there's not a huge amount to say on the the offensive side. I think it was just a Ferrin chance where he tried to get it onto his right foot and let the I forget who it was it Cloutier or Abatne come back and make the tackle before he could get the shot away. But I mean, Kozlowski, the youngster, was he 17? Just turned 17.
Yeah,
he was running a tightrope. I think if he'd got sent off, then we could have had a little bit more of an attack from York going forward a bit more often. But yeah, he got quickly taken off when it was getting himself into a little bit of trouble.
Yeah. And what's funny is that Mejia recognized that and took off the 17-year-old and said, "We need more experience," and threw on a 21-year-old. And the fact that, once again, the back line went from 21-20-17 to 21-20-21. So the average age was a bit higher now.
Yeah.
Is just hilarious. But again, another clean sheet for Ottawa's super young back line. It really feels like David Mejia is doing those youth road to glory saves that you do in FM or FIFA, where you only play the kids and try to win everything.
Yeah,
it really feels like that between them, but it's working. And in real life, the maturity that those three are showing is really, really impressive. Obviously, it probably helped that no one could really do much in the sweltering heat that they were in. But Ottawa were the team that came closest to scoring. Sam Salter, who has been in good form this season, went on 1-1 with Ivan Pavela, the York keeper, who's stepping in for the injured Urtiaga. It's his third game now that he stepped in, and he made a great double save on Salter. And especially the curling shot that went towards his right, that he outstretched, that was a beautiful, beautiful save. And the fact that he was able to step in at such a young age, he was with the U18s for York United, this is the first time that he's really playing at a proper pro level, and especially as a keeper, there's a lot of pressure on you. He's been responding really well. And I'm pretty sure, I think we both agree that we don't rate Urtiaga super, super highly. If Pavela continues like this, I don't see why he can't make a case for himself for, grabbing the number 1 spot.
Definitely. And they need the youth minutes in, and that's the total for picking them up on the weekends, getting those under 21 minutes in. But with when you're performing like that, it's he's been excellent. Like he had started off, didn't he, while they were getting the Utioga's deal like finalized, but since he's come in, he's had some ups and downs. Whereas I think Pavella, when he's come out, he's just played at the same level. Like it's not like he's had any from memory. Maybe people who watch York quite a lot may have remembered something that I'm forgetting. But he just he's looked like a decent goalkeeper with a lot of potential.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that we can say about the CPL, especially in the last few years, is that young keepers, they get a lot of opportunities, and they get a lot of opportunities to step up and show their worth and be able to go on and make some big moves. You obviously think about Gazdov is probably the biggest one, but in general, we talked about Kalongo, not as prominent anymore for Forge, but when he did play, he was really good, and you can see that Pavella might be another case of a young keeper coming in, whether by design or because the opportunity presents itself, performs well and is able to go on and have a good run of games and potentially grab the number one spot. So yeah, I think if he continues that way, Ortiaga might be sweating for his number one spot when he returns from his injury. But aside from that, Mike, not really much to talk about in this one. We could go on and on about the sweltering heat and how hot it was, but instead, let's zoom back out of the CPL for a second and talk about a rumor that was floating around and had been floating around for a while, and that was a potential return for former CPL defender Dominick Zator, the men's national team capped player, has been playing in Poland for the last few years for Korona Kielce, and he bid adieu to that club last month. And so immediately, a lot of speculation about where he's going to end up. Is he going to come back to the CPL? He's going to try to stay closer to the home that he represents, the country that he represents. But unfortunately, for anybody that was hopeful for that return, he has decided to stay in Poland, with now taking on a new challenge under the newly promoted. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and I'm a little bit nervous. The newly promoted side, Arka Gdynia.
Yeah, I'll go with that as well.
Yeah, let's go with it. Yeah, okay, good enough. But he has signed with them for the new Extra Kolasa season. I hope I say that one as well. I really am not great with the Polish names. But that means that he is going to stay now in Poland. And I think as much as him coming back to CPL would be nice, I do think you could argue that he might have outgrown the CPL, because he was actually a quite a good player for Corona in the 3 years I think he was playing with them. He was a really good, obviously, defender for York United when he was here. Had a nomination for the Defender of the Year before he moved to Poland. But it does feel like, obviously, he probably will want to stay in Europe and play at a relatively high level in Europe with Poland, and to sign for like a newly promoted side. You expect he's going to be a busy boy, since they don't want to go back down into relegation. So it makes sense, I think, that he went for this club.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure most teams would have taken him. I think the two BC sides would have probably been desperate to try and come back and help them out.
Valour as well, which we'll talk about.
Yeah. But yeah, you've got your choices there of, do I want to struggle away at the bottom of the CPL, or have another chapter over in Europe. And I'm sure if he wants to in a year or two, he'll still be good enough to be able to walk into one of the teams if he wants to come back.
Yeah, agreed. And I think a lot of Cavalry fans were probably hoping that he'd make his return to his hometown, especially with, Cavalry having lost Dan Klomp. If they
Yeah.
could get Zator in, that would be a huge replacement for him. But I think Cavalry have done pretty well for themselves.
Yeah.
Considering defensively, and we will talk about them at the very end with their game against Pacific. But we're now going to move on to the big one, to the actual big results, the one that's worth talking about the most in the weekend. We made you wait a little bit, because we didn't want to spoil you too early. But now we're going to talk about the 5-0 drubbing that Forge gave to Valour. And I know Mike is so excited to go over each and every goal that went in. It's tough to start, I think, in a match like this. What really set the tone for how this match was going to go was the weather delay. Because the players came out and they were doing their starting 11 photos. They were about to take their positions onto the field when they were called over and saying, "Hey, we just saw lightning, heard thunder.
Yeah.
We got to postpone the game for now." And there was a lot of confusion, obviously a lot of frustration. But that really set the tone of maybe the universe is trying to say something. Maybe just today's not the right day for these two teams to face. And unfortunately for Valour, I do think that delay, I don't want to give them too many excuses, but you gotta, consider it. It did affect them probably with the preparation, with their concentration and their focus, because it really did feel like they got shaken by that, and they completely checked out with how the first goal went in, because the first goal, that's a goal that you expect to be scored in a Sunday league. Just a long high ball over the top. The defenders completely miss it. It bounces kindly in front of the striker. Striker just pops it. Great strike, beats the keeper, kind of goes through him, and then Bob's your uncle, you're 1-0 up.
Yeah.
That's what you expect at that level. Don't really expect that at the CPL, especially, 7 seasons into its history. Once that goes in, you're kind of like, oh no. And I can only imagine how you must have felt knowing that that was sort of the tone that was being set.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very frustrating one for me to watch, especially as it kicked off at 9:30 p.m, but then was delayed on English time. So yeah, trying to keep up with this was a challenge. And then to start like that, and you get Rocker and Romeo back. You've got your two centre backs, like Fernandez gets to play as a fullback, and you think, okay, they're a little bit more set up. You've got players playing in their preferred positions. I mean, Alarcon on the left, maybe not, but Romeo just it just it seems like he's forgotten. Like he had a little while off with injury, and it seems to have forgotten some of the very basics of defending at that moment. There's just different ways they broke their way through in so many different ways, but with real ease. And Dan Nimick with 2 assists to start the game, 11 the first 2 goals, and long ball over top. Next one, he's just running through. No one's tracking him. Finds his way into the box, completely unmarked. To play the ball across, and it was just really difficult to watch. But Forge just found it far too easy. Valour tried a bit, and they got some chances. But again, it was all shots from outside the box. It's all they could get, all they could sort themselves out for.
Yeah, and it definitely felt like it was a team that, I don't know if Phil Dos Santos is like, I got some really good strikers with the ball from outside of the box, so let's just try to build off that. But it felt like a team that was just trying to snatch at every chance they could and hope that they could score a banger to try to get back into it. And, credit to them, after they conceded that one, they were able to fight back and give Forward the challenge and create some chances. I think Twardek was probably Valour's best player on the day, just in the way that he was attacking. And, he's always been someone that works for it, doesn't give up, it doesn't always come off great, but loves a bicycle kick. That just shows like his willingness to do anything to try to get the ball near or inside the net. But once that second goal went in, which it was a nice team goal from Forge.
Yeah.
Don't know what damn Nimick's doing up there, but
like just no one follows him, so you're like, oh, okay, this looks easy.
He just runs through, pass him behind. He has time to look over his shoulder, be like, okay, he's there and he's there. Let me just cross it in. And then Brian Wright's there and puts it away, and it's 2-0. And as soon as the 2-0 goes in, that's it. I think Valour were like 2-0 against Forge, who are undefeated this season.
Yeah.
It's just over. And it felt that way. It was sad. I think that's the biggest thing. As soon as 2-0 went in, the rest of the performance for Valour was just kind of sad.
Yeah.
And there was very little fight back. And it was after that, it was just Forge. It felt like a training session. It was just attack versus defense, attack versus defense, attack versus defense. And Forge just scoring or getting close to scoring. And it just felt like Valour were just waiting for a final whistle.
Yeah.
As soon as the half hour came by, there's a whole other hour of football to play.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, like you say, they're just trying to ping shots from range. They had 13 shots, 2 more than Forge, but they only got 1 on target.
Yeah.
Bit of a difficult watch on that side. But they were helped to a degree, Forge as well.
It's true. It's true. And we can talk about the other penalty that was given that maybe shouldn't have been given.
Yeah.
And that was from Jose Masunda. Kind of glides into the box, beats a defender. The ball goes a little bit ahead of him. He rushes for, to try to get the ball back and into the box. And in comes Rafael Onin, who, I think in my eyes, in your eyes, and most people's eyes, gets to the ball first.
Yep.
And Jose then clatters into him. Both players go down, but the referee calls a penalty for Masunda. Now,
and they show the replay, and the referee is not too far behind them, and there's no one in the way. You can see the referee looking at it and pointing, like he's got a very good view of it.
Yeah, and it's one where it's really tough because we were trying to defend, referees a little bit before, but I mean, Saeed Mohammed Mohseni, I think his name is. It was his first time reffing a CPL match since 2023.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, I think that's
and not a great way to make your comeback with a call like that, especially since Valour were already down in their luck. They didn't need any more against them. And Forge, in the form they're in, and in the fact that they were 2-0 up already, they didn't need any more help. But they were given just that little extra, little cherry on top. And that's when Brian Wright came up and scored his hat trick. Now, I was not able to watch this match, but I was following it on my phone. And I remember looking at my phone and seeing, I think it was like in the 80th minute or something, looking at the score. And you would not believe the surprise I had when I saw that Brian Wright had a hat trick.
Yeah.
I was like, is this 2024? Brian Wright finally come back? I mean, hey, I'm somebody that if you prove me wrong, I will hold my hands up and say, fair enough. And I think he proved both of us wrong in this one. He had a fantastic game, not just, with the scoring, but in general. I mean, to be fair, I think we both have recognized that Brian Wright, outside of scoring goals, is very, very good at what he does at this level. He's really good hold-up play. He's a really good connector. He knows how to create space for other players by pulling defenders away, by making runs. Like, he is a good, player, striker out of possession and just be able to, get the ball into the final third. He's fantastic for that. But we've always just been a little bit critical of in the final third.
Yeah.
Scoring goals.
You're just not clinical, is he, usually?
Yeah, exactly. He's just, I saw a stat that he had 3 goals this season so far before this. But he had an XG of like 6.08. So he was underperforming his XG by half.
Yeah.
Which is not the stat you want to see, but he made up for that XG quickly.
Yeah, catching up
by scoring the hat trick. And I mean, you can say the second and third one, the second one being kind of the tap in from Dan Nemec's cross, and the third one obviously being a penalty that shouldn't be a penalty. We're lucky, but I mean, you got to be there. Somebody's got to put it away.
Yeah, he got in front of the defender for the second one, took the first one really well, brought the ball down and finished. So it's much better than it's not just not being he's not just been gifted goals, I guess. So yeah, he's had to do well to take them. So all credit to him.
And even that little dummy that he did to goalie through and then assist.
He sold the defense.
Well, completely sold Rocco Romeo, who I love Rocco as a person. I got to meet him when in his time in Vancouver. He is a really nice guy. He's so for the fans. He loves the fans. He's a great bloke. But oh my God, his return to Valour has not been
gone to
plan. No, he has been a shadow of himself. And the fact that he's a shadow of himself when he was at Vancouver FC, where it was already bad, really shows like just the struggles he's been going with. Because like you mentioned earlier, like he's just forgotten the basics of defending. Like that ball went through. Brian Wright didn't, usually when you dummy a ball, you like pretend to get it or like, do a movement to kind of sell a defender. He just kind of tucked in. He was like, I don't want it. And then it went right past Romeo, and Romeo didn't even react. He kind of was like, oh, there goes the ball. And then he went, wait, that's going to a player. And then kind of caught up. It was just, it was just so confusing by Rocco Romeo. And I'm just like, what happened, buddy? What happened in the offseason? What's happening this season, man? Like Valour, not to rub salt in the wounds for you, Mike, but Valour, they've conceded 14 goals in just the first 45 minutes of games this season. 14 goals. To give context, they've conceded more goals in opening 45s than Cavalry, Forge, and Halifax have in full 90s. Having played, and for Halifax, having played the game extra. That's how bad Valour have been in the first halves of games. And it's really tough. And it's really, really, really tough. And I actually, because of the run that they were on, I was actually curious to see what Phil was saying about, the game and about how the season's going. And I actually got his quote from the press conference, courtesy of the CPL website. And he said, it was an absolute disaster. If I'm being straightforward, we can't keep conceding goals where balls are played in behind us from deep areas with us not dealing with them. It's 1v1 defending, and we find ourselves 2-0 down early off these type of balls and plays. We have to do better. We weren't good enough. That's all. It starts with me because I don't shy away from my responsibilities, but we just weren't good enough. You know what?
Yeah.
Credit to him. He calls it as it is. He's not hiding away.
Yeah, they were bad, and he's he it's not like this was a one-off as well. Like in the last couple of years, we've come to get used to this from Valour quite a little bit too often, and it's gonna take a lot of work to change. I think a lot of them lost their heads too quickly, like you mentioned earlier. Like they just came into the game after the weather delay, like not switched on at all. Part of the refereeing issues as well, I think that allowed them, they let that help them lose their heads. I thought Figueiredo was just going crazy at times, getting very frustrated. You saw at one point where Olabi Balewu just pushes Quistwadek and just carries on. You just get this image of Valour just like getting very frustrated and letting the game become a little bit chaotic when not very well managed. And Forge just dealt with it professionally, and Valour couldn't. And I think that's one of the biggest downfalls of this team, is that they can get themselves very frustrated and irritated and lose all sense of concentration.
Yeah. And there's not a worse team in the league to do that against than because now they've made it to 11 matches unbeaten in the league after 11 game days. They haven't lost at all in the league, and they currently sit second, 2 points behind Ottawa, but having played a game less. So should Forge win that game in hand, they would technically be in first place. Now, we could talk about Forge and rave about them, but I feel like we do that enough. And I think people probably are tired of it. It does kind of feel like this was less about Forge being great, even though they were great, and more about Valour just being just completely just switched off in this match. And but credit to Forge, they did exactly what they wanted to do. Bobby actually talked about after the game against Vancouver that he wanted them to be more ruthless, take more chances because they missed a lot of chances against Vancouver. Well, the players listened and they did exactly that. 5-0, massive win for Forge. And unfortunately, Valour take another pounding, which really hurts their goal difference now and makes it, I think now they officially have the worst goal difference in the league with -17. Goodness gracious, -17 goal difference in 11 match days. Holy crap. 26 goals conceded, only 9 scored. My goodness. Yeah. It's not looking good, Mike. It's not.
I don't think they'll get the playoffs this year.
I think it might be a tight one. But I think it's safe to say they won't be getting playoffs this season. But now let's move on from the less depressing to still kind of depressing. And that was the Cavalry's 1-0 win over Pacific. Another game that was affected by weather. This time, it wasn't thunder, it wasn't heat, it was rain. Calgary was rained out this past weekend, and the pitch was in no state to be played on Saturday when the game was originally meant to play. So they just said, well, let's hope tomorrow's better and let's play it tomorrow. And luckily, it was. And they did play it the next day. So that was nice because that was the game for me that I thought that one's going to be 100% just called off. But luckily, it wasn't fully chalked off. It was just moved to tomorrow, and the weather did get better, and they managed to drain out the stadium at Spruce Meadows and get the game played. And luckily for the home fans, Cavalry did manage to come away with 3 points. A cheeky little goal from Ali Musa using the outside of his boot to kind of chip it over the Pacific goalkeeper and get the goal inside 12 minutes for Cavalry, which is something that actually they've been really loving recently, Cavalry. They have scored 5 goals in their last 6 matches inside 15 minutes. So they like hot starts. And it's part of the reason why, after this result, they are now undefeated in 10 matches in all competitions, so including Canada. They've only lost twice in the CPL, and that came early on in the season. There was the last time they lost was the 3-1 loss against Ottawa on, I think it was April 26th. That was the last time they'd lost in the league. And since then, they've just been ramping it up. And even though Ottawa have been taking the headlines because of the way that they've been playing and everything, Forge and Cavalry are just being very quiet, just going about their business and winning and winning and winning and winning and winning.
Yeah.
So, it's great for Tommy Wheeler Jr. It's great for the home fans. They had plenty of chances in that match,
Yeah.
Mike, but only 4 on target. But still, a very impressive performance from Cavalry, especially considering that they've been missing a number of players through injury to be able to step up and give a great performance on a day that they didn't expect to be playing. I think all in all, Cavalry can be pretty happy with what they did.
Yeah, definitely. And such an help for getting Kenny Jelver getting his start, and he could have had. I mean, there's a header that somehow went wide. I think it was in the second half. They had very close range, but yeah, they got to mix things up a little bit, but still looking very dangerous. But I think they'll just. The only thing they have that they can be frustrated about is just not scoring more. Otherwise everything's seemed to go to plan. Like with the way they were coping with how Pacific was set up and trying to sit deep on them, they just waited and found their spots and found their times in the games where they could just pile on pressure. And yeah, it's really, really well played again.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that they've been playing with some young players, and they've been able to come in and step up. Gerasimenkov on the left, I thought he was brilliant in this match. Just his delivery, his work rate up and down the left side was really, really, really good, and he's been able to step up because obviously Bradley Camden is dealing with a long-term injury. He stepped up. He's been playing really well. Max Pipegrass as well in the midfield. He's a youngster. He's stepping in because Diego Gutierrez finally got his first minutes of the season. In this match. Got 20 odd minutes in this one, but he's been unavailable. I completely forgot that they signed Michael Baldissimo.
Yeah,
because he hasn't featured at all. I remember earlier today. I was like, wait, Michael Baldissimo plays for Cavalry.
Yeah.
Well, he hasn't been able to make his debut because I believe of injury. So Pipegrass steps in, and still Cavalry are able to just dominate games, be professional, keep it structured. And the fact that this goes to show, I think, really, that Cavalry, when they give young players opportunities, not just to give them an opportunity, they know that these players can actually do it.
Yeah.
And they're proving it. And that, like, the same thing last season when they got, Jay Herdman. He's a younger player that hasn't had much pro experience, taken from WFC2, and he was able to shine. That's one thing I really like about Cavalry, is that they are able to identify young talents. And even if they don't have much experience, they still have that kind of emotional maturity and professional maturity to play in big matches and be able to pull results. So I think that's one really good advantage that Cavalry have been able to have so far this season, and it shines again today.
Yeah, definitely. I think it looks like they're all prepared, must train and learn in those younger age groups in a similar way to how Cavalry's first team will play. So they seem prepared for when they get thrust into that.
Yeah, exactly. And just because you're an experienced player doesn't mean also that you're not prone to mistakes. Marco Carducci almost got caught out in one. I don't know. He's super casual. He's just a chill guy in goal, but maybe a little bit too chill because kind of like just dithering on the ball near his goal line. Kashavars goes and closes him down.
Kashavars or Schiavone, I couldn't remember who it was, but yeah.
Well, it was one of the young Pacific guys.
Yeah.
Was closing him down and forced him into a mistake that fell to Marco Bustos. Marco Bustos took a shot and it went into the back of the net, but it didn't count because the referee had judged the Chavars or Schiavone, whoever it was, to have fouled Carducci, trying to close him down, which could be a bit generous. I was like, it's kind of a 50-50 there. Maybe protecting goalkeepers kind of thing. But Carducci, a little bit of a lucky boy on that one.
Yeah, it was just so funny that it's literally in his goal mouth. It's not like he's to the side of the goal and looking like he's turned. He's just running across not running, sort of dithering across his goal line. Just really, really bizarre. He's obviously wasn't really thinking Pacific were going to bother him too much.
Yeah, exactly. But aside from that, from Cavalry, it was a pretty straightforward. Pacific, unfortunately for them, given their trend, it was also kind of straightforward, just
Mm,
consistent with the performances that they've been given. Credit to James Merriman. He sees that the team isn't performing and what they're doing isn't performing, so he's trying to switch it up. He, I think, gave Scavone his first start of the season, put him at the 6 alongside Sean Young, Christian Greco Taylor. They were playing kind of like a 4-2-3-1. Instead of being a left back, he started a left wing.
mm,
Toulé, who had a good performance last week, was pushed up to the 10. So he was trying to switch things up, trying to keep it fresh, trying to see if he found, some hidden gems in these positions.
mm,
Can he maybe switching things up can get the best out of some of the players? And they had moments in this
mm.
game. They did have moments in this game, but they finished the match with still just an XG of 0.29.
Yeah.
And it is tough, traveling from, I mean, it's not that much of a travel, but still traveling to the Calgary, Cavalry, Spruce Meadows. It's a tough ground, Atco Field. Cavalry is such a good team. They're so good defensively. They're so good structurally. It's always gonna be tough to get shots on them.
Mm,
But it's still like it still just feels like Pacific have no real threat about them. Even Marco Bustos didn't really look all that dangerous
mm.
in this match, and he's usually the one that is like that for Pacific, and it just felt once again all rather bland from Pacific.
Yeah, I think there was a Caden Chung chance which Kodichi made a good save from as he got forward from down the right. But yeah, there's just those little flashes where you think, okay, well, that's what I can see you can do. Why aren't you doing it? And it just maybe I think a 1-0 defeat away to Cavalry trying this new system isn't too bad. I think I hope in some ways, I hope they don't just scratch it and just go back to normal and give it a couple of games to see what they can do, because the other way wasn't working either. So you got to let the players get a little bit more used to a newer style of play, a newer system, and see how that can go. Because if they can start finding players in dangerous positions, then there's something to work off. But at the moment, whichever way they've done it, they're just not doing that. But they had a couple of bits in this one, but yeah, it's still a lot of work for James Merriman to do, and he's, I mean, as much as we both like him as a coach, and we said it, you said it earlier about the other Vancouver and Valour, like in other leagues, if these are the results you're getting, then you don't stay in the job for too long. If you're in some of the other leagues around the world, I think work needs to go in to start changing things, because it's been a long time for these three sides down the bottom to be so far off the others.
Yeah, and that's the part, is like you mentioned it, like looking at the table, we talk about having two leagues. It almost feels like it's two leagues, but then there's York in the middle.
Mm.
And it's just the bottom three trying to not be last,
Yeah.
because now there is 6 points between York and Pacific, and as I mentioned earlier, there was 7 points between York and Halifax.
Mm.
So York are kind of just like, well, we're in the 5th position, we're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
As long as we stay here, we've reached our goal. But
Mm.
Pacific, Valour, and Vancouver are just struggling at the bottom. And all three of them have these massive problems and these massive issues. And you can tell because you look at it, Pacific, who are supposed to be one of the best defensive teams in the league and have been for the last few years, have conceded 20 goals in 12 matches. Negative 12 goal difference.
Mm.
Valour, as I said, a whopping negative 17 goal difference in 11 games. And Vancouver at the very bottom with only, 1 win and 3 draws, negative 11 goal difference. Like it isn't even close
No.
between the bottom 3 and the top 5. At least York United have a positive goal difference with +1, even if they haven't, been able to light it up like the other, 4 CPL teams. But it just is concerning. And now I think the biggest question, holistically, looking at the whole league, is which of those bottom 3 teams that have stuck by their managers despite poor results for multiple years pull the trigger first to try to change stuff up. Because at this point, all 3 are, and no disrespect to any of the coaches, it's just all 3 are kind of accepting this mediocrity that they're going. And I'm not saying the coaches are mediocre. I'm just saying that the trends that they're going, the way that they're playing is poor. And who's going to, be proactive? Who's going to be brave? Who's going to pull the trigger and say, we need change? I don't know. Because if they don't, things can change in CPL. It's still early on, yada, yada, yada. All the same excuses. But trends are trends for a reason. And I don't see any of those 3 sides being able to break out of their trend right now. So I don't know if you feel the same, but for me, something's got to change.
Yeah, that's it. I think, it's very difficult. And the owners of these leagues, like fans, are really important. Getting people in the stadium, getting an atmosphere is really important for the league as well as the clubs. And when you're playing like this, fans aren't coming. And so at some point something needs to happen that you're going to get the community back involved and excited about your team. I just don't know how that's happening at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I'm hoping that it gets better because for the sake of the league, we like a little bit of competition. And for the sake of those 3 teams and their survival, they need to do better, especially Pacific. Valour and Vancouver, okay, that's kind of been their history ever since they got into league, but Pacific have won the whole thing before. And to see them down there, that's very concerning. And considering that we were talking about Pacific having one of the best off seasons, before this, to see them down there, it's very, very, very concerning. But we'll see what happens. If any big change does happen, of course, you'll hear from us, and we'll chat about it on a future episode. But for now, that is all for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow us again on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC. So let us know your thoughts on the games and on the league itself. Do you agree with us in our analysis of the bottom 3 teams? We'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But for now, until next time, I'm Felipe and
And I'm Mike Rice.
And this has been Coast to Coast FC, signing out.